To a degree, and for all the flaws the prequels did have, Star Wars fans have seen elements of them deployed in really interesting ways recently. None more so than in Christie Golden's novel Dark Disciple, about a failed Jedi plot to assassinate Count Dooku near the end of the Clone Wars. So down your blue milk and lock your S-Foils in attack position. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here's the Star Wars story that saves the prequels. Love them, hate them, or just generally just accept them, the prequels are a part of the Star Wars canon and shouldn't be erased. Yes, they had plenty of flaws, but at their core they still told a really interesting story. The concept of seeing Anakin Skywalker succumb to the dark side and join the Sith is an inherently compelling one, but the execution was lacking. By the time Anakin had been reduced to a smouldering wreck on Mustafar, audiences weren't exactly left with a gratifying journey. We understood that Obi-Wan thought his former Padawan a brother, but the evidence for that connection just was completely scarce, save for brief expository dialogue regarding gun darkness and that business on Cato Nemoidia. Evidently, it needed more exploration, which came, eventually, in the form of the Clone Wars TV show. Genndy Tartakovsky had previously tried his hand at a 2D animated Clone Wars series, and it was great, but the era needed something more substantial. There were years' worth of stories to explore, and in Dave Filoni's Clone Wars, they finally were. Yeah, I know the 2008 movie was lacking in plenty of departments, as were the earlier seasons of the show, but it improved drastically towards the middle of season 2. Central to this was the time spent developing the relationship between the Jedi and the clones, the return of Darth Maul, and the relationship between Kenobi and Skywalker. The series added so much, in fact, that it invites viewers to reappraise Revenge of the Sith. When viewed with the Clone Wars in mind, you're left with a completely different impression of Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship, and one that informs the entire saga going forward. Dark Horse Comics' last Star Wars book adapted the unaired Son of Dathomir arc from the series, while various other storylines made their way online through storyboards, animatics, and early footage. However, only one became a fully fledged novel, Dark Disciple, which was adapted from the incomplete and unaired 8-episode arc of the same name. So, I know what you're thinking. Why does Dark Disciple, out of all the hundreds of Star Wars stories that emerged out of the prequels, somewhat justify all their shortcomings? Well, first off, it must be said that it isn't the only Star Wars story to have made effective use of the prequel trilogy. Other such works to have done so include Kieran Gillen and Salvador Larroca's Darth Vader comic, as well as the recently released Jedi Fallen Order video game, but it is the one that best embodies their potential. Set during the bloodiest days of the Clone Wars and with no end to the conflict in sight, the Jedi Council hatch a daring plan to bring it to a close. They sanction the assassination of Count Dooku. Now, surreptitious conflict isn't exactly the first thing you think of when you think of the Jedi Council, and it's a decision they eventually come to agonize over a great deal. For the reader, though, it's patently obvious to see that it's the moment the Order was consumed by Darth Sidious's conflict. Their downfall was complete. The actual conspiracy itself is also fairly rotten, but it spotlights one of the most beloved characters to have joined the Star Wars canon from that era, Asajj Ventress. Ventress, a former apprentice of Count Dooku's, quickly endeared herself to fans thanks to her sleek design, unique lightsabers, and her verbal sparring with Obi-Wan Kenobi. By the time Dark Disciple is set, however, Ventress has long since parted ways with Dooku, and is instead operating as a bounty hunter in Coruscant's underworld. The Jedi surmise, given the manner in which Ventress parted ways with Dooku, that she'd be the perfect candidate to kill him, and they're right. Ventress was betrayed by Dooku once Darth Sidious became aware of her existence, and had since harbored a vendetta against her former master. They also know, however, that she isn't likely to want to fight Dooku of her own accord, with the bounty hunter carving out a comfortable living for herself, bringing in fugitives of a vastly different caliber. With this in mind, Obi-Wan recommends that the Council deploy Quinlan Vos, a Jedi who has dabbled with the dark arts and is an expert in undercover operations, to pose as a bounty hunter, gain Ventress's trust, and then strike at Dooku when the Sith Lord least expects it. You can just about hear the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme playing in the distance. At the end of Attack of the Clones, Yoda prophesies that the shroud of the dark side has fallen, before we're treated to a hefty dose of foreshadowing featuring shots of the clone army with the Imperial March playing overhead. The implication here is that the Jedi are aware they're being manipulated, played, and yet they're powerless to stop it. There is also the added implication in Revenge of the Sith that the Order has been corrupted by years of conflict, fighting not as the guardians of peace and justice, but instead as soldiers in a war with no end. The point is that they've been changed by war, but as with most aspects of the prequels, it's barely discussed in detail. We're told that the Jedi have been compromised as a result of the conflict, but it scarcely manifests across either episode 2 or 3. Dark Disciple, on the other hand, devotes its entire story to the Order's lowest point, where they order a murder by manipulating a former ally of the Sith. Exacerbating the Jedi's folly is the fact that their scheme ultimately fails. They dabble in the darkness only to emerge even more tainted, and with nothing to show for it either. Dark Disciple thus occupies a vital position in the chronology of the rise of the Empire. By examining the corrupting influence of war, Gold manages to make the stakes of Revenge of the Sith even more palpable. The Jedi have exhausted all other options, and have been brought to the brink with no other recourse but to look inward and ask why the war with the Separatists hasn't ended.
That's why it takes so long for them to alert to Darth Sidious's deception, and by the time they do, it's clear that they're too late.
Yes, you can gather this all from Revenge of the Sith, but the point isn't conveyed half as well without the added context and discussion Dark Disciple and indeed the Clone Wars provides.
It shows that not only did Sidious manage to destroy the Jedi, but that he managed to ruin them before he dealt the killing blow.
When Dark Disciple was published in 2015, it came at a time when the Clone Wars were as good as gone. Rebels was on the way, and with it a renewed focus on the original trilogy. Dark Disciple is still a must-read for Star Wars fans, and especially for those who are fascinated by the prequels. Whether you love them or hate them, the book provides a valuable perspective on the Clone Wars, and exemplifies the strength of recent expanded universe media. So yeah, that was my little look back at the Clone Wars and Dark Disciple. You can find more Star Wars stuff on the channel and whatculture.com, and you can find more of me on Twitter at YouRunesThings. Until next time though, have a great day. Bye!